All right, we are live. We are going to get going here with Tina Murray here in just another probably 30 seconds or so. As soon as I see 11 o'clock Houston time. I'm in a different time zone right now. So see the participant numbers ticking up. Welcome, everybody. Feel free to give everybody a holler in the chat. And be thinking about any questions you have for Tina. We will start a Q&A time at the end of toward the end of the presentation. And I'll be fielding those questions and giving those to Tina. So at any point, feel free to go ahead and put those in the Q&A section. If you can't find that, you can put it in the regular chat and I'll be browsing that as well. All right, without further ado, welcome to the next episode of Biblical Worldview in the Marketplace webinars, presented by Houston Baptist University's Center for Christianity and Business and the McNair Center for Entrepreneurship and Free Enterprise. I want to thank the McNair Center at HBU for partnering with us on this important presentation you're going to hear today. You can get more information about HBU's Center for Christianity and Business. Subscribe to our podcast, which I have the pleasure of being able to host, and also sign up to receive free access to all issues of the Christian Business Review Journal by visiting our website at christianityandbusiness.com. And also go check out the McNair Center for Entrepreneurship and Free Enterprise at hbu.edu/McNair Center. The McNair Center teaches the principles of individual responsibility, limited government, and principled entrepreneurship. And also just want to say, I hope and pray that those of you located in Houston right now are quickly recovering from the winter storm over the past week. I know Tina was, her people were in the middle of that. She actually had already been on a vacation when everything hit. But I know it's been a rough week for you folks. And Tina today has been, she's going to really encourage you. Actually, the topic was entrepreneurs, failure is not an option. I think is even more relevant now on top of the pandemic and winter storms and just the chaos that we face as entrepreneurs. We're going to get a lot of encouragement today. Tina Boaz Murray is the president of Mind Dance Marketing Incorporated, which is a marketing and brand management agency she started at 26 years old. So those of you who feel like they're too young to start something, let that be an encouragement to you. It's headquartered in Houston, Texas. MDM specializes in supporting franchised brands across the country. And most noteworthy on their client roster is the 21 years of support MDM has provided to Chick-fil-A markets nationwide. To date, MDM provides brand management for 15 Chick-fil-A markets. And also want to mention, she is a proud graduate of Houston Baptist University. Tina, thanks for coming to share some of your entrepreneurial journey and lessons learned with us today. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Well, thanks, Darren. And good morning or afternoon, depending upon where you might be out there. It's just an honor and a privilege to come to you today. And I can't see you, which makes obviously this so challenging sometimes when you're talking about your heart and you're talking about a journey that you've been on. But hopefully through this webinar, you will hear a little bit of my story that might inspire you to just think differently about where you might be in life or where you might be going despite the path that you have behind you. And that's really where I want to start this morning, about why failure is not an option. Failure is not an option is really a battle cry for Tina Murray. I think I want to tell you why it's my battle cry. And then I want to show you like where I'm taking the battle cry throughout my journey as a wife and a mom and, a business leader. This battle cry really starts all the way back to when I was in third grade. And I worked with a coach about 2 years ago to try to maybe help me understand the pace at which I want to work, the woman that I want to become, and how I want to get there. And she dug really deep on the fact that failure is not an option for me. And what does that mean? And how passionate I was about it. And one of the things that we uncovered in Failure is Not an Option is a story that goes back to third grade. And it's a hard story for me to tell, and I've only actually told, you're the second people that have ever heard this story, but it is this. It was Hurricane Alicia, and coming off this snowmageddon or ice pond, that however you want to phrase and whatever meme you want to use about what just happened to the city of Houston. But back in the 80s, Hurricane Alicia hit the city of Houston, and it was a devastating storm. And this was really before the massive storms that we've experienced in the last 5 to 7 years in Houston. Obviously, this was, many years ago. But Hurricane Alicia was coming to the city of Houston, and it was the night that it was going to hit. And my mom was actually at work, and my dad was at home with me and my brother and my sister. And we are all 18 months apart. I'm the baby of 3 kiddos. And so we're all in elementary school. And the phone rang. And back then, phones were connected to the wall, or they had a really long cord that you could kind of carry around the phone. And I picked up the phone at the exact time my dad did, but the clarity of phones was not what it is today. And he didn't know that I had picked up the phone. And on the other end of the line was a woman, and she said, "Richard, where are you? The kids and I are scared, and we need you to come over to our house." And my dad replied to this woman and said, "Pat's at work, and she wants me to stay here with these damn kids." And I remember thinking on the phone that I was one of those damn kids that he was talking about. Now, I don't remember what happened after. I don't remember processing. I don't remember my heart wanting to go tell my mom what I heard, or I don't remember that. But I think what I do remember was this call to achieve. I remember it bubbling up in me to not want to be one of those damn kids. And so I went on to junior high and high school. I'm a graduate of Cy-Fair High School here in Houston. And throughout my junior high and high school, and even going into college at HBU, I played sports and participated in clubs. And people often said things to me like, "You're so good at everything you do. You're such a natural athlete." They gave compliments to determination and the sheer sweat equity that I was willing to apply to not fail. And I feel like in that journey of not wanting to fail is where I really came up with my battle cry of failure is not an option. And I want to just share, I'm going to flip over here to this quick deck of slides and just share a little bit about where I am now. So obviously we're talking about failure is not an option, but I want to just let you know that God has sent me the most incredible husband. You see here, Darren mentioned that we just got back from Disney World in Orlando. We had not planned that because of the storm, but it actually did work out so well that we did that with the storm, because we were there last week. And so my husband, Greg, is on the right. And then you see Marley, my 13-year-old, and Maddie Kate, my 11-year-old, and then Macy, my 15-year-old there at Disney World. And this is where the story gets good and gets away from the hurt and kind of into the build, because after the hurt happened, I went to Sam Houston State University for exactly 1 day. When I graduated high school, my mom had the expectation that we were going to go to college. Now, keep in mind that my mom had lived through this, I guess, lifestyle with my dad and chose to divorce him after my dad had all these indiscretions with other women. And my mom was a single parent. And her determination for leading our family resulted in my brothers and sisters and I working nights and weekends at my mom's printing company. And we would turn our paychecks over to my mom because she needed those funds in order to make our family function correctly. Because we didn't have my dad or my dad's income at the time. So the struggle for our family included things like at times we didn't have electricity. At times our telephones would get turned off. At times we had to borrow money from people in order to buy groceries. There was a period of my life where the struggle was real and might have motivated the journey. And when I enrolled into Sam Houston State University, I was dating a boy. It's not Greg, so he doesn't like this part of the story, but it's not Greg who I was dating, but I was dating a boy, and I really thought that I wanted to marry this person. And so I decided not to go to Sam Houston. And then my mom said, well, you have to go to college. So she marched me down to the University of Houston and said, this is where you're going to go to college. And so I enrolled in HBU. And at the time that in U of H rather. And at the time that I enrolled in University of Houston, I wasn't really an active a student. I certainly wasn't attending class on an active basis, and I wasn't really participating in the education. And I think this is the period where I would say, especially to any young people that are on the webinar this morning, my story was not over. But I think if you looked at me at that period, you might look at me and say, wow, she really took a turn for the worse. She was actually going to maybe be something. I saw potential in her, and now she's stalled out. She's not going to college. I'm not sure what her plans are for the future. But my mom told me, go get a job in the career that you think would be most interesting to you. If you're not going to be in college, and I was still in college, but I just wasn't excelling. She said, go get a job in a career that you want to be in. So I went and got a job at 104 KRBE. And back in the day, in that time frame, 104 was they were a happening station. They were the #3 radio station in the country, and they were doing some really amazing things with loyalty cards and magazines and things that actually probably sound really silly today. But this is 25 years ago. This was really cutting edge marketing that was happening at KRBE. And through my relationships at KRBE, there were two people that really impacted my journey. One of them was Mark Schechterly, and the other one was Pam Kehoe. And these were people that really poured into me and said, get your act together. Pick the design that God has for you and go towards that. And I didn't know what that meant. I think about now about when my daughter asked me, do you hear God talking to you? And I'm like, well, it's not like a voice. I'm not hearing him speak directly to me like a phone call, like, Tina, here's what I need you to do today. But those two individuals actually helped me move my journey from stagnant into motion. And whether or not it was the right motion was a little bit irrelevant. But the fact that I was moving in a direction, I think, was probably the forward movement that they, at least as my mentors, wanted me to be in. I went from KRBE over to the AM side and radio to work for 740 KTRH. And some of the older generations on the phone here today will probably recognize 740 KTRH as being one of the radio stations that's talk radio, where you might be getting your news. In that time frame, my boss at the time, Pam, said to me, you really need to accomplish graduating from college. She recognized the need for me to finish. So I enrolled in Houston Baptist University. And I hate to say it because I know Ernest is on this webinar, but I think one of the main reasons why I enrolled at HBU was because they would accept me. And so with that acceptance, I went to HBU, and that came with a lot of accountability. I had professors calling me, asking me, hey, are you showing up for class? Or, hey, you made a C on that exam. Can we help you through this? And let's talk about the grades. I'm so grateful for the accountability that walked me through my years of HBU. But I got to the last semester at HBU and I could not graduate. And you want to know why? It's because I had been in school for 7 years. And at some point, the government, with my grants and loans and tuition assistance, I believe they thought, well, this girl is just not going to make it. So in that time frame, I had to go to my sister and her husband, and they were newlyweds. And I had to say, look, I asked mom for the money and she said no. And quite frankly, I don't blame her. I had been living off her, her paycheck for quite some time, off her gas bill, off her, paying my car insurance and things of that nature. And what happened in that time frame is that my sister, even as a newlywed, agreed to bankroll $5,000 for me to finish my education. Now, I mention all of this to you because, again, if my story had stopped at any point along what I'm telling you, you might have a much different opinion about me or the way my journey was going. But at that point when I graduated and I went to work for a PR firm, I really began to understand that failure is just not an option. I really, as a young adult, began to understand the sacrifices that people had instilled in themselves to make me successful. From my mentors to my parents to my sister and her husband giving me money. And that's really where this battle cry of failure not an option began to take flight for me. And there are things along the way that I feel like have absolutely changed my course as a Christian, but definitely changed my course as a leader in my business. I went from the PR firm and started my own agency at the age of 26. Now, that's a risky move. I don't know that I would recommend that to everybody, but it's definitely a risky move to start your own agency at the age of 26. And here's why it was risky for me. I'm not sure I knew everything about business or leadership. I don't know that I knew a lot about entrepreneurship, but my first clients were Chick-fil-A, BMW of North America, and Marbleside Creamery. So I had a really good lineup of clients coming out of just reputation management that I was doing. And I realized really quickly that the industry that I had been working in, the media industry and the advertising industry, whether it was in my radio days or my PR days, was really much like a family. And I really believe that in those instances that the reputation, as it says in Proverbs, that a good name is better to have than all the riches in the world. I really believe that that is an important tool to instill day in and day out, because I went to my family and I asked them to help work on my reputation. I asked them to help me by referencing me to their clients. I asked them to help me by sending me people that I could talk to that might be an opportunity for me to gain a client in a business. And in my first year of business, I had 13 different clients in my client portfolio. As Darren had mentioned, Chick-fil-A was my very first client. They remain to be a client today. I'm so fortunate to be on this journey with that brand. And in that journey, I think this is really where I would get into the nuts and bolts of what I believe is failure is not an option, is that it's okay to fail. I'm not saying don't fail. I'm saying it's not an option to stay down when you have failure. And one of the things that has helped me along that is just to know that 40% of your daily actions are actually not actions, they're habits. And so in order for me to figure out how I wanted to go about and build this business at 26 years old called Mind Dance Marketing, and the fact that my mom had said, I'll let you try this for 6 months. You're 26. I was really fresh out of college, despite the fact that I was 26. And my mom had said, I will bankroll you for 6 months. But at the end of 6 months, if you don't have your business up and running, I want you to move home and I want you to kind of start over in your career path. And that's when I realized that, Duke University did a study and it said, when you rise in the morning, nearly half of your day will be determined by patterns that you either intentionally create or you passively allow? So when you rise in the morning, 40% of your day is already crafted for you on an autopilot of the things that you have intentionally created in your life, or if there's no creation that you're intending, that it would actually passively take its own course. And these are the things that I really want to unpack for you today. There's 5 items that I want to chat about, and I'm going to go back to this piece because I want to just kind of share with you my thoughts on the 5 things that have helped me ensure that failure is not an option for me. The first one is writing handwritten notes. Men on this call, I think probably are going to say, hey, it's not my thing. Young people, you're probably going to say, why would I write a note when I can text or email or send a TikTok video? But here's why. Especially during COVID, we all need a little bit of happiness. And Truett Cathy, the founder of Chick-fil-A, actually would say, do you know how you can tell if somebody needs encouragement? The answer is it's when they're breathing. If someone is breathing, then they need encouragement. And so my handwritten notes have always been part of Tina. It's part of my manifesto at Mind Dance. My team is required to write 1 handwritten note at the end of every week to lift somebody up. And during COVID, what I really love about that is that I love the opportunity to be able to send a handwritten note to somebody and leave a little happy gram in their mailbox, which, is probably you're enjoying mail a little bit more these days than you might have pre-COVID. But if you don't mind, I'd like to share with you one secret about my handwritten note strategy. And it is this. I used to write notes. Let's take a thank you note, for example. I used to write thank you notes that said, thank you, Darren, for introducing me this morning. You did an amazing job at lifting me up right before I presented. I very much appreciated being on your webinar today. Warmly, Tina Murray. But then I started changing the way I wrote my thank you notes, and I would write things like, holy cow, pun intended, on behalf of Chick-fil-A, my largest client. I was super nervous going into the presentation this morning, and your introduction put me at ease. Thank you for giving me that warm introduction. It was a pleasure to be with you this morning. Warmly, Tina Murray. And part of leading a thank you note or a handwritten note was something more than what you intend to convey. So my intention would be thank you, but what I wrote first was holy cow. It really just grabs the reader in a different way, and it causes them to have a different reaction to what they're reading. And it shares a little bit of my personality. So I would just encourage you, the first thing that I do to instill that failure is not an option is that I keep up my relationships. And one of the ways that I do that is by handwritten notes, because eventually you're going to need those people that you're writing these notes to one day to help you, whether it's emotionally or physically or financially, if that happens. I believe that God calls us into meaningful relationships with each other and with Him. And this is one of the ways that I like to be in meaningful relationships with people. And I have written a lot of handwritten notes and I'm during COVID, and I've gotten a lot of really great responses back from people about how that lifted their day. The second thing I want to mention to you about things that have really helped me in Failure is Not an Option is to give everyone 15 minutes of my time. Early in my career, I would say if anybody really wanted to speak with me, that I would carve out 15 minutes on the phone for coffee. Maybe we had lunch together. I quickly learned that God had a different purpose for those 15 minutes than I would have intended. I thought the 15 minutes was because somebody wanted to pitch me an idea or ask me to spend advertising dollars with their television station. But I think if I really slowed down, what I was learning is that Tina needed those 15 minutes. I needed those 15 minutes to hear from someone else, to fill my cup, to be educated, to be inspired. And I have to say that once I changed my relationship with time, I learned to lean into those 15 minutes with people. I learned to appreciate giving time to people. It is my rarest commodity. It's likely your rarest commodity too. It's the one thing that you have the very least of, but it's probably the one thing that everyone wants from you. My husband wants it. My children want it. My team wants it. My friends want it. And I actually want it for myself. And so when I think about giving 15 minutes of time, I have to spread it out amongst all those people. And it's important not to forget yourself. It's important for you not to forget that your 15 minutes of time is actually for you as well. You need a moment to refresh, to dig deep in something that you're thinking, to go into the word and make sure that you're listening for what the journey is intended to be. But slowing down to hear other people and to hear their message and to hear their journey has actually really inspired my journey. And here's the part where it comes into failure is not an option. Failure is not an option to not be in a relationship with humans. I love what my pastor has said about how the 10 commandments are written 4 to how we should interact with God and 6 on how we should interact with each other. And when I think about that, I really go back to what I said before about God is asking us to be in a meaningful relationship with him and with each other. And this 15 minutes, the repositioning of how we spend our time and taking out the, I don't have the time, I want to cancel, I don't really need to talk to that person, and just lean into the moment actually produces a better Tina. And I hope it produces a better you. The third thing that I've done to ensure that failure is not an option is develop a board of directors. And I have developed a personal board of directors and a professional board of directors. And let me just explain the difference between the two. My personal board of directors is a group of men and women. I would call them some of my deep, lifelong friends. And we get together and we discuss these deep topics about what am I struggling with? Where are my fears? Where's my anxiety? How transparent can I be about where my marriage is, where my children are, where my business is even? And my personal board of directors are people that I intentionally went and asked them to serve on this board. Now, it's not a formal board. They don't get paid to do it, but I do call them together once a quarter, if not more, during crisis times. I do call them together and I ask them to support me in the challenges of my life. Because I believe that failure is not an option, I can't believe that I'm designed to do that only with Tina. I want the perspective around me of people that I trust and admire and people that I respect to help guide my life. Now, simultaneously, I would say I'm going to take that into my professional board of directors. And I would say on this one, I actually went a little bit broader. I went to people in my industry. I went to people outside of my industry. I went to a client that I had previously had, and I put together a team of people who agreed to serve alongside me for 2 years. And let me just share this. During COVID, that group of people was so important to me. Now, don't get me wrong. I have leadership at Mind Dance. I have people that I trust and respect to guide my business. But in the sense that I really needed someone that I can unpack 100% of the emotion that I was feeling and 100% of the I'm scared and I'm in uncharted waters. I had to let people go. I had to reduce salaries. And then I got to hire people back. I got to bring people's salaries back up. And in that journey, I wanted people surrounding me that were going to help me make really good decisions. And this is where my professional and personal board of directors came into play. And I would tell you, young people that are on this webinar today, it is not too early to develop a personal or professional board of directors. You don't have to have a professional job or a professional career, if you will, to have a professional board of directors. Surround yourself with people that see the greatness in you. Ask those people to lift you up. Plan and make time to go and visit with them. Bring them together over coffee or lunch as a group. These may be people that don't know each other, but bring them together. The goal is to make a better you. And in my time of doing this over the last probably almost 8 years, I would say that I am a better Tina, and that my struggles become lighter because of this group that I surround myself with. The last one that I want to leave you with before we get off this PowerPoint is just leave everybody better than you found them. This is actually something that we take very seriously at Minddance. And I would say leaders on the phone, whether you're an entrepreneur or a worker, you likely interact with somebody in your office. And it's not terribly difficult to leave people better than you found them. But you do have to be aware and intentional to do the actions for that. At Minddance, here's the way we do that. I have 200 people that work for me across the country. My job is to leave each one of them better than I found them. So I work really hard to make sure that they know who I am. With 200 people, everybody might not know me, as well as the people that share an office next door to me. But I work really hard to make sure it's a handwritten note, it's a text message, it's a quick phone call. Everyone on my team has my cell phone number, and everyone on my team is encouraged to reach out to me when they need it. But then I empower my leaders. There are times when you're in a meeting and you have real work to do. My leaders are encouraged to make sure that they carve out time to check in on mental health, to check in on how are you doing. I also do things like, I had somebody on my team that whose daughter wanted to take some advanced classes that they couldn't afford. And I heard about that, and I stepped up and covered those classes for her so that she could let her daughter take these classes. Now, to me, it's a couple $100, but to her, it could be a pathway to a new career for her kid. So it's being aware to make sure that not just am I not failing, but that the people around me aren't failing. The people around me are encouraged and inspired. And so we live in an environment at Minddance about leaving people better than we found them. But I want to speak for 1 second to the young people that are on the call and determine the age of how young you might be. But here's what I would say to young people. When choosing a career, choose to work for leadership that's invested and interested in you. I have to say, I've done this. As a leader, I want work done. I want high output. I want high efficiency. I want great work at Minddance. But I can't let that stand in the way of investing in my people. And I'm not really great at it, I have to say. I have people on my team that are much better at this than I am, thankfully. But what I would say is, young people, don't just look for the job. Don't just look for the description of the job or the company name that you think is cool. Look for the people that are going to be leading you and ask yourself, am I going to be a better person when I stop working here than I was before I came? Am I going to be invested in? And am I going to be championed to be my best self? Likewise, leaders on the call, I would encourage you just to double check where you are in guiding your people and leaving your people better than you found them. These young people that come to work for us, or your new hires that come to work for us, I tell my people all the time 2 things. One, I tell them there's no crying in chicken. So from a Chick-fil-A reference, I would like to say, there's no crying in chicken. And so I don't want people to come to work and get so stressed out that we cry over the work that we do. And the second thing that I tell people is, leave people better than you found them. And take a deep breath, and in every interaction you have, try to carve out something that inspires them to be their best self. Now, I want to share with you that my journey in all of these points is, it's not always consistent. I mean, as a leader and growing an agency, I don't always have 15 minutes. It looks different today. My 15 minutes looks like a text message maybe, or it looks like a quick phone call, or it could look like a midnight email conversation. Also, I think leaving people better than I found them might look a little bit different too. It might look like delegating authority to somebody else to make a move on a team member. Or it might look like me walking into somebody's office and saying, hey, I just want you to know you need to go home. It's 5 o'clock and you have a little kid that goes to bed at 7:30. And I want to make sure that you get family time tonight. So I think that it looks different, and I want to be open to that. I want to be open to failure is not an option for me. It shouldn't be an option for the people that I serve. Pardon me. And I want to pass that along to the people that choose to spend their time at Mind Dance Marketing. That we're going to rise to every occasion. We're going to do our very best. We're going to become human in doing that. We're going to celebrate successes. We're going to celebrate failures, because there's a lot to be taught inside of failure. And at the end of the day, we're going to make sure that we make time for ourselves. We call it white space at Mind Dance. In order to be a really good leader, we have to be really good at ourselves first. And so if anything that I would ask you to take away today is maybe not that failure is not an option, but how do you ensure that failure is not an option? What steps can you take? What pieces do you want to instill? Who are you going to surround yourself with? And maybe in that conversation, you ask yourself, what are you willing to let go of? Because if you're like me, you have a lot on your plate right now. I don't know really where you are in your journey, but I can tell you that society measures success by busy, and it's wrong. Time is not an indicator of success. Checklist is not an indicator of success. But when I think about not wanting to fail, I have to make sure I know what I'm not wanting to fail in, and for whom I don't want to fail. My priorities have been steadfast since I started this business. I'm a Christian first and foremost, and that's a filter that has to be applied to my everyday walk. I'm a wife second. I made a commitment and a vow to Greg to be his wife and to honor and respect him for the rest of my life. And I intend to do that, despite how hard it can be to be married for now what's going to be 18 years. I'm a mother that has its own challenges. And then I'm a business owner. All of those things set us up for struggle. But if I can remember what my filters are and keep my filters intact, my word for this year is simplicity. And I want to know that I'm creating good habits in that. I write handwritten notes. I inspire people to take good care of each other. I give people 15 minutes of my time. And I appreciate the opportunity, Darren and Ernest, that you've given me today in order to share my story. I hope it inspires someone along the way. I would love to share my contact information with you because, above anything, we are in this together. And I wouldn't have chosen to have this conversation with you today if I didn't want to step up and say, hey, call me if you're struggling. Call me if you want to unpack more. So here's how you can reach me. And with that, Darren, I think I would turn it back over to you. I see some questions out there. I don't know if you want me to start the questions or you want to.
Yeah, you can go ahead, and I see at least one question in the Q&A. And I also want to mention that I'm going to launch this poll right now. And so the question is, which of those habits that Tina mentioned are you going to start before the end of this week? So is it you're going to start giving handwritten notes? You're going to give 15 minutes to everyone? Maybe it's all the above, and you should be able to pick multiple ones. And so by the end of the Q&A, everyone will probably have given a response, and then I will display the percentages so we can see what everybody else is planning to do. But yeah, Tina, go ahead and take it away. I know we have a question from Christos. How were you able to get such big names on board so early on, Tina?
Yeah, great question, Christos. And I'll tell you what that is. It's part of the reputation management that I talked about. So when I worked in radio, I'm a very relational person. I also talk with my hands. And Darren was like, please put your hands down. I'm a very relational person. I'm also just by nature a very authentic person. And so I just managed relationships, and it was probably a little unintentional until I got more mature. But what happened is that when I decided to launch my agency, Christos, I went back to the people that I worked at in the radio industry, on AM and FM side, in my contacts that I had met, people that I started with in radio had gone on into other, businesses. And so I went back to those people. And when I launched my business, I asked for help. I told them what I was doing, and I asked them if they felt led to pass my name along or make some introduction, that I would be happy to take that honor from them and meet with their clients or friends or whatever. And so that's really where I got my big clients. I will say my Chick-fil-A client was a client from a previous agency. And so I had some inroads with them. Now, where I am today, how I got to, working with Chick-fil-A for so long, that's a different story for another day. But I will tell you this, it has to do with evolving. I have a saying that at Minddance, and I say, I want to be on the whiteboard at the company when they're going through the reorg. Now, I'm an agency, so I shouldn't be on their whiteboard. That should be like their org chart, right? But that's where I want to be. I want my agency on that whiteboard. And so I think today, 22 years later of working with Chick-fil-A, that's how I've done it. I've evolved. My job is to solve problems for my operators and for the Chick-fil-A operators that I serve. And that's what I'm in the business of doing. And if I wasn't doing that, I probably wouldn't have this tenure that I have now with them. But good question, Christos. I'll also say that my journey is not for everyone. When we were talking earlier with Darren, I used to work from home with 3 kids, a nanny, and a husband who also worked from home. Like, I don't know that I would recommend that for everyone, but you have to find your journey. And my journey started with getting really good filters in place, who I wanted to be, where I wanted to go, and who I was willing to ask to help me get there.
Excellent. Next question. Would you recommend working for a company first before launching your own business?
Look, I'm going to tell you this, and I don't know that this is what every entrepreneur wants to hear, but I would tell you, just know where you are. What is your level of knowledge of whatever business you're in? So for me, I had grit, I had grace, and I had relationships. And I was determined not to fail. I did not want to move back home. So I had motivation. I did not want to move back home with my parents. I think the smart way to do it would be to go and get the experience first and then start your own company. But I don't think that's how Steve Jobs did it. I don't think that's how Warren Buffett might have done it. Like, I think about the greats out there, and I think about the journey is going to be unique to you. And so I would encourage you to take inventory about how hard you are willing to work to make it a success. I probably worked 18-hour days for the first 5 years, which was fine because every dollar I made belonged to Tina. It's not a way I'd run my business now, but there is a lot of sweat equity that has to go into launching a business for sure.
And Jacqueline asks, what differences did you see when you started having your team write handwritten notes?
Well, the grace and emotion that comes from the intimacy of a handwritten note, it is a lost art. I love stationery. I love putting things in the mailbox. I love getting good mail. I think we probably all like getting good mail. Like, good mail is good to get, but I would say it develops a relationship that you can't get otherwise, especially during COVID. Like, I can have lunch with you and I can, maybe go to a Texans game with you. But that handwritten, gracious note that comes from the heart develops a deeper relationship with the end user. And my team, sometimes they struggle with it, but it's a requirement at Minddance because every day and every week we encounter people that we should thank. And I don't mean like a text message or a phone call or a quick email. Hey, thanks so much for doing that. I mean, like, putting thought and energy and effort into this handwritten note. And so we have fun stationery at Minddance, and we have free stamps, and we require our team to write notes.
And Kevin asks, do you approach the principle of time for self proactively, or do you just manage your schedule very well?
Oh gosh, Kevin, I'm a hot mess on my calendar. I want you to know. Here's what I do. In fact, it's literally right here on my desk. Like, okay, so I bought this little thing at Target, And this is a calendar for Tina time. This doesn't go on my Outlook. This isn't part of my calendar that my team can see, but my Tina time calendar in January, I sit down with people that are important. All of my date nights with my husband are listed. All of my vacations with my family are listed. All of my, once a quarter, I step away by myself and take a personal day. I call it a vacation, but it's like a personal day, just to reflect on Tina. Now that, I'm going to be really clear. Like, I love massages and I like to get my nails done. Like, that's not Tina time, in my opinion. Tina time is when I can sit down uninterrupted and be safe to read a book or be safe to listen to a webinar and know that I'm not going to be interrupted in that. And so I schedule it. And then I tell my team, this is what I've scheduled. This is where I'm going to be and when I'm going to be. And the other thing too, I would tell you, Kevin, is that I've asked my team to do the same thing. I walk them through my exercise of time management. Can I just go on to expand that, Darren, for one more second? Because I think this is also profound about time management. So I worked with a time management coach. That's how bad I was, Kevin, at time management. I hired a coach. And one of the first things that she said to me was, like, how do you prepare for your day? And I was like, I'm not really sure if I know how to answer that. And she said, okay, well, how do you prepare for your night? And I was like, okay, so it's a rush to get dinner, bath, bed, homework, marriage time in that little time between 6 and 10 p.m., 11 p.m. She said, well, what time do you go to bed? And I was like, 11 to midnight. How much sleep do you need? Now note the questions that she's asking me. What time do you go to bed? How much sleep do you need? I need 8 hours to be a nice person. Okay. So then she said, well, if you have to get up at 6, then you can't go to bed at midnight and be your best self. You need to be going to bed at 10, which means you need to be taking a shower here. You need to be doing marriage time here. You need to be doing homework here. And it blew my mind. She literally gave me this sheet of paper with the hours on it. And I just began blocking out my time. And for the first year, I set alarms on my phone that would say things like, go take a shower, start your marriage time. And it seemed ridiculous. My phone was going off all the time. But what it helped me do was just to be aware of the time. I had no awareness of my time. I just kind of went through my day and if there was a fire, I took care of it. If there was a meeting, I attended, but I didn't have awareness of my time. Now, I'm not great at it, but I can tell you the fact that I can look at this personal calendar next to my desk and know when I'm going to have my next date night with my husband, and I have that blocked and I won't compromise it. That's a good feeling for me. And so I can share, Darren, with you the timesheet that I have. And really, it's just like if you just start midnight to midnight and you go in and you ask yourself, how much sleep do you need? That's the first real question. And then what's your bedtime? And then what's your bedtime routine? I think that's a good starting point to knowing how to better care for yourself.
Excellent. Ernest asks, what is the biggest lesson you learned from a failure experience when you grew your business?
Okay, in complete transparency, I will tell you, just about 3 years ago, I had a girl working for me who I loved. I hired her right out of college. I could see her being in my family for the rest of her life. Like, I wanted her part of my family. She made a lot of mistakes along the way, and we couldn't coach her out of these mistakes. And the final mistake that was made was that we were doing a social media buy. And instead of doing a $10,900 buy, the term fat finger, she fat fingered the numbers and did a $109,000 buy for the client. Okay, so in that error, Minddance had to come up with the discrepancy. We had to pay the client back. Well, actually, we just paid Facebook directly, but we were on the hook for almost $100,000 that we didn't intend to spend. The first thing we did was we went to the client and we said, here's what happened. Clearly you got value from it, right? Like, it wasn't that it ran and there was no value. You got value. Let's look at the value. Let's determine what fee we need to be paying into this. The second thing I did was I looked at my processes. How did this happen? Where was the breakdown? Why didn't we have any governance over this? And then the third thing I did was I looked at the person that made the mistake and said, we knew she had a history. I knew that there was trouble in the way that she managed work. And it took that instance. I went to my board of directors, and one of my board of directors owns an agency much, much larger than mine. And she said to me, here's the lesson you need to learn for the rest of your life. Be slow to hire and quick to fire. And I'll never forget it, because you know what? Had I been mature enough, and you learn these things in business, I don't think I did it. I don't think I could have done it better. I didn't know better. That's not good English, but I didn't know better at the time. But now I know. Now I know when struggle happens, if I can't correct it, I need to pull that person out and say, hey, this is not the role for you or the business for you. Let me help you get to where you need to be. For her and for me, it would have been a better decision. And that was that was $100,000 lesson that I had to learn. And, obviously that stunk, but I'll never forget it.
Wow. I don't think I'll ever forget that either. What a story. Rosie asks, first she says, thank you for this webinar and sharing your experiences. And she says, as a 25-year-old, I am surrounded by potentially toxic productivity. As I am entering the field of marketing, how, if at all, do you choose a specialty such as SEO, data analytics, pay-per-click, social media, et cetera? Where do you draw the line with passion and expertise versus potential business?
So let me just kind of take that one at a time, Rosie. First of all, I just would give you all of the encouragement. You're going to make a ton of mistakes and a ton of failures. And I would just encourage you to keep going. 25, that's what I mentioned before. At 25, if you had stopped my story, you would not be looking at me right now saying, wow, I can't believe. When people look at me and say, I want to hear about your story, I want to make sure I tell them about where I was at 25, because that wasn't a really pretty picture. I was jacking around in college. I was disappointing my parents. I had to borrow money from my sister and her husband. Like, these things are a reality about where I was at 25. I will tell you, surrounded by toxic productivity, I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that, but here's what I would tell you. As a leader, it was never my intent to build an organization that might have had what you're calling toxic productivity. I think we've got to give grace to leadership, especially entrepreneurs. This is my first time ever running a business. It's my first time ever working with this many clients at this volume that we're doing with this many employees. And my brain is focused on work and output. I had to learn to surround myself with people who were better at the time. I think that's what makes a good team. And so first thing I would say is, hey, extend a little bit of grace. Second thing I would tell you about any toxic environment is know where you stand, know what your expectation is. And then I will tell you what I tell my team. Please don't bring a problem unless you have a solution. It may not be the solution that I want, and it may not be the solution that's actually best that they want, but don't just make me your problem solver. So maybe that would help you filter through. How do you maybe filter through in any environment? There's ups and downs, right? For marketing, I seem to think that my ups and downs are a big project. We're going down to hit the next project. Then you go back up for the next big project, and then you come down from that project. Look, burnout happens when you can't manage the up and down, up and down. Burnout happens when you try to stay up all the time. Burnout happens when your leadership doesn't force the downtime to be really downtime. And so I would encourage you just to know how that feels, know what your burnout looks like. And then above all things, I would tell you, take care of yourself. At 25, you're likely to have many jobs in your future. And I would just say, take care of yourself along that journey. Where do you draw the line with passion versus expertise of potential business? I don't know that I understand the intent behind the question, but I would tell you this. Passion can do a lot for you, but it actually doesn't make you an expert. Surround yourself with people that see greatness in you, that are smarter than you. Even when building your own team as a leader, never be afraid to hire people that are smarter than you or older than you. I had a man on my team, my very first hire. He was a man. He had a ton of gray hair and he was older than me and had more experience than me. And he scared me because I was like, what if he's smarter than me? What if he knows more than I do? I'm going to look like an idiot. But the reality is I might look like an idiot, but I also can learn from him. And I just went to him with my fears, and they were just insecurities. And he helped me along the way. It changed how he interacted with me, because he was like, I think you know everything. And I was like, I don't, John, and I want you to teach me. And so, we had to have that open conversation.
Another question, what is your advice on dealing with someone you can't stand in the workplace?
Well, funny enough, we just talked about this yesterday, but we talked about it with a client, like when a client has an adverse relationship. If I can relate it to the client situation, I would say the first thing that we did was we talked about moving people, right? Like when a client isn't meshing with one of our brand managers, we should be moving the brand manager. In your situation, can you ask for a transfer? Can you move to another area? Maybe not in order, but also I would say, have you talked to that person? And I mentioned this because in the way we work with our clients collectively, the franchise group, so many people that own restaurants, let's just say, they come together and put their money together. We had a gentleman that just absolutely did not want to put his money in, and he was frustrated and he was vocal about it. And he did not like Mind Dance because we were receiving the money to do the branding with. And one of the things that I did is I just was determined to win him over. I was determined to sit with him, to hear him, to understand his perspective, not try to change him. And over time, I just wanted him to hear me and understand my perspective. Now, lucky for me, that turned out really well. He became a huge advocate of Mind Dance, and also he got on the board that spent the marketing dollars eventually. But, I think that sometimes when you think about not being able to tolerate a coworker, sometimes it has more to do with you than them. And quite frankly, perhaps the first place we should start is with ourselves first, and go to the Word and ask God, like, how should I work as a human? What am I called to do in this life? It's certainly not work. None of that is going to be measured. When you stand in front of your Lord and Savior. I think all the time when people ask me to do things that they think are going to make me a better person, I think to myself, I never want to stand in front of my Lord and Savior and say, I didn't do my best. So the question might be like, well, why not? Why not your best every day? Why not your best? That's a quote from Truett Cathy that he used to ask people. But I don't know that that's a great answer for you, but I wish you luck, and I'll pray for you. Oh, you're on mute, Darren.
Thank you. I knew that was going to happen at some point. I just shared the results from our poll. Are you seeing that, Tina?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. So it looks like everyone is committed this week to leaving everyone better than they found them. And several people also saying they're going to start handwritten notes, start giving everyone 15 minutes, start a board of directors, and some people daring to start all 4 of them this week. That's exciting. Any commentary on that?
Well, listen, it's a habit, right? And I think one of the things that I read to you before was that, in order to make these things really turn around the positivity that you would desire and the encouragement, and to be able to lift you through the tough times in life, you have to make it a habit. And so I cheer for you as you start this habit, and I hope that it brings you happiness too, especially the handwritten notes. That it brings me a tremendous amount of happiness. Well, the 15 minutes to everyone brings me happiness too, because I know going into it, I'm not here for them. I'm here to hear what they're going to give to. I'm not here for them in the sense that like they think they're getting something from me. I'm here to hear how they can help me. So listen for the subtle nuances.
Awesome. And I just shared a link from hbu.edu. If you folks want to go on and watch more from Tina, there is a panel of women entrepreneurs. Some of you may have been at that event. That was about maybe a year ago there at HBU. It's really going to encourage you. They're these incredible Christian women sharing their entrepreneurial journeys, and just shared the link to minddancemarketing.com where people can go check out more about what you're doing. Tina, there's 2 minutes left. Parting piece of advice for everybody, and then we'll sign off.
Well, I just want to say thank you for having me. Please keep into perspective that I am one voice, and I believe that this time together today was orchestrated for us to learn from each other. Some of your questions that you're asking me, I'm learning from, and I want to share answers with you and with others. Reach out to me if you want to. Happy to respond and start a one-on-one conversation. I think what I would start with, or end with what I started with, which is failure is just not an option. I don't think that's God's design for our body. I don't think it's his design for our minds. And I just wish you guys the best of luck as you complete 2021, as hard as it's been. This is a year where failure is not an option, probably means more than it has in the past.
Awesome. Well, Tina, thank you again for sharing your wisdom and your entrepreneurial journey. This has certainly been inspiring and very actionable. Thank you for the tips that you shared that we can put into practice, even starting today, starting right now when we jump off this webinar. And also want to thank the Center for Christianity and Business for putting on this amazing presentation, and also HBU's McNair Center for Entrepreneurship and Free Enterprise. Everybody can go to hbu.edu/McNair Center to find out what they're up to in equipping entrepreneurs, and also christianityandbusiness.com to get access to more of these kinds of webinars and podcasts. And thank you everyone for attending. Thanks again, Tina.
Yeah, my pleasure. Y'all have a great day.